Guys, after subscribing to this channel, please make sure that you also press the bell icon so that no notification, no new video of mine, any educational video, is missed by anybody.
All right, guys. So welcome everyone for this class tonight, and it's a very, very important, very, very tricky, very, very confusing topic: fetal growth restriction. I usually restrict myself to the management part mostly with the postgraduates, but here how important history taking is, you'll get to know, because if you've seen my class, and I strongly recommend everybody who has not seen a small short class that is posted on the Telegram channel couple of hours back, to how to approach the guidelines. Whenever you're reading any guidelines, especially if you're reading GTG guidelines or even NICE guidelines, there is a way to study it. See, finally, at the end of it, guys, remember one thing, that you have to reproduce the thing which you are reading in the exam. If you're just reading for knowledge sake, that's fine. But remember, that is just eating away your time without finally eventually giving you something. Even if you're making notes on the proper, complete guideline, it finally boils down to how much do you remember and how much are you able to finally produce it in the examination. So my idea when I'm reading the guidelines is very, very smart. The only thing in guidelines which you have to see, how did you go to the consensus, what kind of studies were done, how did you move there, is a very long story. Nobody asks for it. What is finally asked you is the recommendations, which are given in the gray boxes now. In GTG earlier it was green boxes, that you have to study. And usually when the guideline is completely over, there is a big algorithm or a table or a flow chart towards the end, which actually is the highlight of the guideline, which you will not find in the guideline per se. So that I've taken. So anyways, I strongly recommend everybody to please go and watch that 30 minutes class that I've taken on how to approach what is the management, how to read the GTG guidelines, plus what is the approach for a case of FGR, especially the management approach, okay? Which is, for the first time, you'll find it very, difficult. But as you study again and again, especially with the input that I've given you, it will become easy. I'll probably sometime also make a flowchart of my own, which will make you understand that easier, but it's a very self-describing flowchart. So I don't think you'll have much of a problem. Now, I start my case today with two of my very sweet students who are presenting the case on fetal growth restriction. And we'll be taking you through the journey of the history taking, vis-a-vis investigations, vis-a-vis the management. Okay, all in the highlight of the guidelines, the GTG recent 2024 guideline, and the fetal growth restriction case per se. So welcome both of you, Charul and Kanika, for the class. Over to you, Kanika, for the case presentation.
Yes, ma'am. My patient, Mrs. X, 28 years, married to Mr. Y, who is plumber by occupation, married for 2 years. She is resident of Delhi. She is 10th pass, homemaker, Primi Gavida, a booked case. Her LMP is 22nd December 2023 with regular cycles, making her EDD 29 September 2024. Her period of gestation as per today is 34 weeks 1 day. She, during her routine antenatal checkup, she was found to have a fetal growth lag.
So just for my information sake and everybody who's there in the class, so this was the first time this fetal growth lag was found, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah.
She is a booked case. She was attending her antenatal checkups regularly and taking her medications. This time during checkup, she was found to have growth lag. There is no history of pain, abdomen, bleeding or leaking PV, no history of increased blood pressure recorded, headache or blurring of vision, swelling of limbs, no history of generalized weakness or breathlessness, no history of itching palms and soles, and no history of any repeated urinary tract infection. She is pursuing normal fetal movements.
Okay, let's wait here and let me ask my students who are there. Why do you think this history was asked? What is the relevance of this history being asked to our patient? Why did she ask? Fine, pain, leaking is fine. You have to ask to every antenatal patient. That's fine. What about BP? What about generalized weakness, breathlessness? Why was this history asked? And does it have any relevance with us in our case? Guys, like I said, be very, very fast in answering, because this pause, it looks like, unending when you're seeing recorded lectures, and I don't want to waste your time. After every 2-3 minutes, I'll be asking questions and I need an answer. Yes. These are all... Yeah, sure, Charul, please go ahead.
Ma'am, because ma'am, fetal growth restriction can be associated with hypertension, ma'am, with the preeclampsia patient because of poor placental supply to the
See,
fetus.
yeah,
Fetal
yeah,
growth
okay.
restriction can take
Yeah,
place, ma'am.
agreed, okay. Okay,
Yes,
fine.
ma'am.
One thing, let me tell you guys, many of you speak about this placental dysfunction in the exam, which is a very closely related factor to fetal growth restriction. I totally agree. In fact, in my class, you must have studied the recent GTG guidelines that they are the ones who tell you the difference between SG and FGR is actually the deranged Doppler flow. Now, deranged Doppler flow will neither be given to you by the patient, nor is it reflected in your examination, nor do you, I don't know whether you are able to, procure the test records of the patient in the exam, that I don't. But we were not given. So this is only and only placental dysfunction will come to us through the tests, mostly through umbilical mostly through a deranged Doppler, you can say. So to speak in the exam, even if you are mentioning over here BP, preeclampsia and stuff, never mention placental dysfunction. Yeah, because in our case, we cannot speak right now about placental dysfunction, though of course, preeclampsia mostly is caused because of placental dysfunction, and that could also lead to FGR. My idea of asking this question was that many of you have written down the answer in the chat box, and I'm very, very proud of you. Preeclampsia is a direct cause causing FGR. We all know that, number one. Then next set of symptoms, generalized weakness and breathlessness is they are symptoms of. Come on, guys.
Ma'am, these are because of maybe any chronic illness which is leading to anemia, or she is having any cardiovascular problems, chronic cardiac diseases,
Both of which will cause FGR. So we are just trying to figure out why is there a growth lag. So in the very outset history of presenting illness, we are, kind of righteous to ask what are the probable causes of having a fetal growth lag at this point in time. So is she having any, anemia, or she's developing preeclampsia, IHCP? Tell me the most common complication associated with IHCP, guys.
intrauterine death, ma'am.
Yes, stillbirth is the most commonly associated, and sometimes prematurity, because you basically you're intervening before time. Prematurity because you are delivering out the baby because of increased LFT are going deranged. Okay, so usually it will not be a cause for fetal growth lag, but stillbirth can be. Repeated uterine infection, urinary tract infections, very, very important, mostly leading to preterm labor, but also associated with fetal growth restriction and perceiving normal fetal. Okay, so that's absolutely okay. That is the relevance of our negative history. Yeah. Now for me, first trimester history suddenly becomes important because now I'm trying to see from where is she started having this, difference of dates. Correct? Yes. Please start, Karnika.
This is a spontaneous conception. Pregnancy was confirmed by urine pregnancy test done 2 weeks overdue. She is sure of her dates. She came for her first NC on 2nd month of pregnancy. There is no history of any excessive vomiting, fever with rash, burning micturition, spotting or bleeding per vaginum. There is no history of any drug intake or radiation exposure. She was taking folic acid regularly from 2nd month onwards. Her ultrasound during first trimester was fine. There was no abnormality detected.
Anything specific that you would want to know in the first trimester history over here?
Ma'am, in the first trimester, the usual risk factors are like if your BMI is less than 18, the patient's BMI is less, that is 18.5, or her age is more than 40 years, or there is any history of infection like chickenpox or herpes, or any recurrent bleeding in the first trimester, or there is any.
You talked about BMI, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
BMI is a risk factor for fetal growth restriction.
Yes, ma'am. Low BMI.
Okay. Because she's being booked right now, so you're seeing to everything. Okay. What else? BMI low, that means how low?
Less than 18.5 kg per meter square, ma'am.
Yes, that's one of the moderate risk factors. What about high BMI? Would it not be associated with fetal growth restriction?
Yes, ma'am, but this guideline, it is not mentioned.
Actually, yes, they say when you're talking about women with unsuitable, you're not able to decipher out the symphysofungal height. Okay, you take it as towards the high risk side. I mean, you instead of going through symphysofungal height, you are calling her for ultrasound. But yes, BMI high is associated with fetal growth restriction, not according to the recent guidelines, but the earlier one was. Remember what BMI did we say earlier on for high risk? More than 35?
More than 35, yes, ma'am.
So that was associated. So you saw that whether she's having, look-wise, she's chronically ill, she's having some, high or very low BMI, her basic nutritional status overall, her socioeconomic background, you saw all those things. But that you usually see in booking, which is very specific thing that you want to see in the first trimester. All of you can answer. All of you can answer. And you can also answer that.
It's first trimester PAPA levels, ma'am, in the current pregnancy.
That's very closely associated. What is the level of PAPA that will be called as a high risk factor?
If it is less than 0.4 multiples of median.
Yeah, I mean, multiple of median MOM. And but now according to the guideline, we say less than 5th percentile, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
PAPA less than 5th. There's one more thing which I would want to know, which is more, more common than your PAPA and all. Inhibin A will not come in first trimester, guys. Something else which I would want to know. You can answer, Charul. Anything which you feel in first trimester, I need to know. And more common than everything else. No, not again, not even AFP beta. All these are your second trimester markers. Okay, beta, HCG, and PAPA is the first trimester marker, right?
Any infection, ma'am?
Any drug intake, any drug abuse?
Early on, if there is an infection, she will also manifest early. Our case is the one who is developing now at 34 weeks. I mean, she's a book patient. She's coming for a regular antenatal checkup. We would have caught her before, right? But in
Yes.
first trimester, I'm asking. That is something I really need to know at this point in time. This is the kind of question all of you get trapped. My real intelligent students are not able to answer this basic thing. Very, very important question and very, very basic question, because this is the most, what do I say, common thing that I would want to see. Okay, I'll answer you what I mean. Sometimes, the question that I put up is not understandable enough for you to correlate. So the answer is that I would want to see her booking scan, whether her dates were falling with the corresponding LMP. That's the most important. This is the reason why we call it dating scan, guys. Isn't it? Don't you think it's important? All
Yes,
of you?
ma'am.
Am I right? Scan is very important because we want to correlate. See, she says LMP is so-and-so, okay? She is having regular dates. Agreed. Sometimes what happens is that how many times have you, seen these patients who come to me and they say, last month I had period, and then you poke further, because according to the scan, she's not falling in that category. And then you poke further. She says, yeah, period did come, but it was just spotting mostly. She's calling it a period, but actually it was not a period, right? Her full-fledged normal period was maybe last month, but she's associating last month's spotting PV as a period. Happens with so many of us. So the first trimester, I would want to ask you whether the booking scan was corresponding to her dates or not, because maybe she is not fetal growth restricted, maybe she's wrong dates. Correct? For us, this is the most important thing in the first trimester history. Everything else is important. Everything else is also relevant, but this is my most important question to you. All right. So nothing specific. So there's negative history for everything else, right? So we have seen her PAPA and everything was it done, beta? PAPA was done?
Yes, ma'am. It was done. It was okay.
Dual marker was done and was okay. She's
Yes.
an educated patient. The patient is educated.
And she's 10th pass, ma'am.
That means she can still think and say about all this. Okay. What about second trimester? Anything specific?
There was nothing specific. Quickening was perceived around 5th month. There is no history of any blood pressure, raised blood pressure, headache, blurring of vision. or fever, no leaking or bleeding discharge PV. Her blood and urine test was normal. Anomaly scan was normal and normal fetal growth was recorded. She received 2 doses of tetanus toxoid and iron and folic acid intake was she was taking regularly.
So, what do you think, Charul? Who should I ask her for specifically for second trimester? If I really want to see why is she developing growth lag at around 34 weeks? Is there any insult that I would want to be more inquisitive about in the second trimester? What kind of question should I be asking?
Ma'am, about the diet, what she's eating.
Okay. Okay, that she's going to cover in the personal history. Okay, then we'll see her there. What else?
She's taking iron and calcium supplementation or not,
Okay.
or and rest also.
Yes.
At least 1 to 2 hours sleep is during the day. It is important for proper.
Okay. What else?
So,
my history, which though she's already covered it, but I just wanted to hear from you that what all do I specifically need to ask her whether she started developing blood pressure or not at this point in time, or was she coming regularly or not? Her blood pressure was being checked at every visit or not, right? Whether she had any infection during, none of you have answered that, any recurrent bleeding episodes, any recurrent UTI episodes, all these will lead to finally the development of the baby. Now will come your inhibin, now will come your, because that is there in your high risk factors. What was the inhibin that came? She'll not be able to tell you. But yes, it's one of the, if her dual marker was okay, I'm sorry, the quadruple marker was fine, that means, the levels were all right. Otherwise, if inhibin level was high, AFP level was high, it is associated with, it's a high risk factor associated with the fetal growth restriction. And of course, if there was anything specific in the anomaly scan, ecogenic bowel or something like that, how was the baby's weight growing? Was it falling, in between 10th and 19th centile, or was it slowly showing some growth lag, towards the end of the second trimester?